من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ولا واتبعوا بإحسان يوم الدين أما بعد. I just want to just thank everyone today for coming. And if this is your first time here, we want to say welcome to you. Inshallah, we're dealing with a very important subject, our prayers. And I'm sure that most of us, we've learned our prayers. But this class is definitely going to be focused on acquiring the source information for our prayers. Generally speaking, when people take Shahada, somebody generally says, listen, let me show you how to pray, and they help them. And many of us, that's the way that we've learned. Or we've learned like we have this book that we're going to be utilizing. Our brother, Abu Layla, Hafidhullah, he has brought not only this particular book that you have in your presence, which is a mukhtasar, an abridgment, he's also brought the Sheikh's original works. So inshallah, we're going to be treated that we're going to not only be satisfied with the basics of our prayer, but inshallah, we're going to try to also increase ourselves, those of us that already know how to pray. The last thing I just wanted to say that we brought, I think, 15 books today, and we've gotten money for 9 of them, I think. So there's some money that's outstanding. If you have a book, just before you leave, inshallah, please try to see me because the brother gave me the books on consignment, inshallah. If you don't have a book, let me know, and inshallah, we're going to order books also for next week. The last thing I want to say is that, inshallah, we need a rostrum sheet going around that in the event that we're not going to have class, that we could notify people well in advance, inshallah. I said that was the last thing. We also have some refreshments that we ask you to please take from the table, some coffee and some donuts. And inshallah, anybody that would like to donate next week, please see me after class. Don't forget the sheet that we need your name on. We need your telephone number that we can reach out to you. And if possible, you can put your email on it, inshallah. Barakallahu fi. May Allah bless all of you. Ameen, inshallah. I think there's a sister that's coming that wants to take Shahada today. Is she here yet? No, she's not here yet. Okay, inshallah. So we're going to do that today too. So I think that without any further ado, I want to give the mic over to our brother Abu Layla, inshallah.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Inshallah ta'ala, we're going to try to take some of the work of Sheikh Al-Albani, rahimahullah ta'ala, and explaining the salat. As the brother mentioned, it is a very lofty topic. It's going to be the first thing that we're going to be questioned about, Yawm al-Qiyamah. It is something that is required from us, yawmiyan, on a daily basis, which shows us the importance of it. It's not like the performance of Hajj, which may be once in a person's lifetime, if they're capable. It's not like the performance of the fast of the month of Ramadan, which only comes once within a year for a certain amount of days, and it is restricted to a certain time frame within the day itself. So when we look at the actions and the deeds that we are required to do as Muslims, the prayer is from amongst the loftiest, from amongst the most honorable, and from amongst the most obligatory actions that are desired from us. As the brother mentioned, we are using the work of Sheikh Al-Albani. This work that is present in front of us is an abridged work, meaning that it is summarized. It is complete from beginning to end, covering the salat, but the detailed authored work of Sheikh Al-Albani is of 3 volumes, and it is entitled Aslu Sifatu Salat al-Nabi, the origin or the basis for the description of the prayer of the Prophet. What we have here is Sifatu Salat al-Nabi, the description of the Prophet's prayer. So the title itself is explanatory in terms of it being a description of the Prophet's prayer, but is not the original basis of the work of the Shaykh. That work is of 3 volumes. 1 volume is twice the size of this book. And as we will explain, the majority of the work of the Shaykh is in detailing and explaining the narrations, their authenticity, the fiqh behind it, meaning the understanding, and also the discussion of the scholars pertaining to its application and its limitations. So what we want to do right now, inshallah ta'ala, the asloob, the manner of the class is that we will have a reader, any particular individual. At this time, we're going to have the brother. He's going to read from us. We're going to take from the preface of the work, the introduction of the Shaykh, so that we understand the manner of the book as we move through it. Because as we're going to see in time, the manner of the book itself has some highlights to it that should be pointed out. So we have under this chapter here, reasons behind the compilation of this book and some of its features. We're going to skip to a statement of the Shaykh where he says, I have compiled the book. Naam akhi. It's in the preface. Under the titling, reasons behind the compilation of this book and some of its features. The preface of this work here, it does not correspond with the smaller new prints that the majority of you have. That's why I chose the brother to read. His preface, introduction, and the text of his book, it corresponds with this book. But the introduction of the smaller books does not correspond page by page with this book. Triple I? In your book, the smaller print? Okay. The statement of the Shaykh where he says, I have compiled. Fadl.
I have compiled the book as 2 texts, the main text and the subsidiary text. The main text includes the text of a hadith or phrase taken from them, as well as appropriate words and putting them together to give the book of fluency from start to finish.
Khair. And as a sidebar, a note for anybody that is going to read, if you hear me or if you hear a teacher in the midst of your reading for him, because this is the normal practice in circles of knowledge when a book is being taught, that there will be a reader and then there will be the mu'allim, the teacher. But when he stops you, he may say hasb. As the Prophet ﷺ, when he stopped the companion when he was reciting the Quran, he said hasb, sufficient, you've done enough. So you may hear hasb, you may hear khair, or you may say, that's it. So at this point, I'm going to stop the brother because the Shaykh is now explaining and detailing the manner of how he has authored his work, that he has split his work into 2 sections. One of the pieces of advice from our mashayikh is that when you are learning a science, whether it's hadith, whether it's fiqh, whether it's Quran, whether it's the Arabic language, whenever there is an enumeration, whenever there is something that is being given in sections, it's being counted. There are 5 pillars. There are 2 parts to the day. There are 7 verses for Surah Al-Fatiha. The importance is to enumerate how much. So anytime, whatever the science is, if it is being broken down into sections and it is enumerated, so they might say it's endless. You just know there's various and there's widespread difference. What if they say the scholars differ over the individual that has left the salat ala qismain, into 2 categories? So we know it's only 2. Or as Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentioned in his explanation of Sahih al-Bukhari concerning Laylatul Qadr, there are over 40 different positions concerning which night is Laylatul Qadr. So we know it's not a slight difference, it's a vast difference. When is Laylatul Qadr? Over 40 different positions from the scholars. So here the Shaykh, he has broken down his book into 2 positions, a main text and a subsidiary text. We're going to jump down to where the Shaykh says, as for the subsidiary text, if you can read for us, Akhi.
As for the subsidiary text, it is a commentary on the main text. In it, I have traced the ahadith to their sources, exploring their various versions and routes of narration. Along with this, I have commented on their isnad in supporting narration, with authenticating and disparaging remarks on narrators, whether authentic or weak, judged according to the rules of the science of hadith.
Hasb. The Shaykh is now detailing for us what we are going to encounter in the subsidiary text, not in the main text. This is where he starts to break down his manner of how he addresses, approaches, and handles the hadith of the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wasalam. And he tells you his care and his concern for what is authentic with what is not authentic, as there are narrations that are attributed to the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wasalam, and they are fabricated. They are baseless, and they are genuine lies. This is a section from the study of hadith, the narration that is fabricated, mawdu'. It is a lie against the Prophet, alayhi salatu wassalam. So there is concern with purging what is false with what is authentically narrated upon the Messenger of Allah, alayhi salatu wassalam. And he says that he judges the narrations according to the science of hadith. And this is very important. This is very important because the Shaykh does not leave to himself the avenue of hawa or following his own desires of what may suit an individual to champion their cause or position, to find an exit out from a difference or an argument, but rather he refers back to the principles and the guidelines that have been set for the science of hadith. We continue down where the Shaykh, he mentions here, next I have mentioned in the subsidiary text. We scroll down. Next, I have mentioned in the subsidiary text.
Next, I have mentioned in the subsidiary text the method of the scholars regarding the hadith trace, as well as the evidence and counter evidence in each view, along with the strength of weaknesses and weaknesses of each argument.
Hasb. Now we're starting to get a little bit more into the fibers of the Sheikh's actions and dealings with this particular book. The evidence of one side, one group, one party of scholars, countered by the position and views of another party of scholars. And this is very important because when an individual is studying a topic or a science, you want to understand what encompasses the entire subject before you conclude a position. Normally, for individuals who are short on resources, short on the avenues of pursuing knowledge, we may look for a quick remedy. فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of knowledge if you don't know. So at this time, you become a blind follower. It has its pros, it has its cons, it has its places, it has its limitations. So the individual asks the scholar, what is the ruling of so-and-so? What is the position of so-and-so? What do I do in so-and-so? And you have to rely on his answer for your guidance. The Shaykh, rahimahullah ta'ala, is also comparing statements of other scholars against other scholars. So what this is going to do for the average Muslim is going to give us an understanding and an awareness, not only for the positions of all of the people of knowledge, but it's going to give us the understanding that in order to best conclude what is the truth, what is the weightiest position, the way towards achieving that goal is by encompassing the subject, understanding both sides, both positions. We scroll down and we conclude with the statement of the Shaykh where he says here, since the publication of this book.
Since the publication of this book with both main and subsidiary texts, it is not feasible right now due to various reasons. We have decided to publish only the main text of the book, along with 3 footnotes. By Allah's will, the name is Sita Sola and Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam.
Khair. So this is going back to what we mentioned previously. It was difficult for the Sheikh to present this work in its entirety at that particular time. So what he gave was an abridged version, not the entirety of the work. He gave forth an abridged version. So as we go forward, inshallah ta'ala, there may be some additives, some mentionings that come from the asl, the initial foundation of the work of the Shaykh that are not in this particular work, but they are complementary. They're going to help support the topic and subject matter as we proceed. One of the things that I wanted to highlight, and it was something that was brought to my attention by our brother Abu Abbad, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserve him, during my research and review for the class, was to set a foundation for the people with the salat. And in doing so, this foundation will be something for individuals to refer back to in times of difficulty, in times of confusion, in times of unawareness. Not every aspect of the prayer's description is remedied the same way. There are actions of the prayer, there are statements of the prayer. There are actions of the prayer that take place before entering into the prayer. There are actions of the prayer inside of the prayer. There are actions inside of the prayer that are present at a time, and then they're absent at another time. And the way these issues are remedied and they're addressed in times of confusion, in times of its absence, or in times of increasing. We've done something too many times. It's handled differently. So we want to give the people a foundation that as we go forward and what we do put on your plate, we have a foundation, we have a reference for these particular actions and positions of the prayer, that if you can plug them in as we go along, not only will it initially help to clarify for you the positions of the scholars, but in time of confusion and in times of difficulty, understanding which way to go, you'll have a roadmap. We've titled it as Actions of the Prayer. We scroll down, we have that which is obligatory and that which is recommended. These are the actions of the prayer. And when we say the actions of the prayer, we're not just talking about harakatul badan, as we would say, the movement of the body. This is a general term, and everything inclusive inside of the prayer is going to get thrown under this category. It's the action of the prayer. But it's a statement, it's the action of the prayer. Well, it's a movement of the heart. It's the action of the heart. It's the action of the prayer. So we've titled it Actions of the Prayer, A'mal al-Salat. Underneath it, we've categorized it now. The actions of the Salat that are sought from you. There are actions that are prohibited, and within that realm, they were split as well. Not all of the actions that are prohibited in the Salat are on the same level. And likewise, not all of the actions that are sought from you, this is what is desired for you to do, they are on different levels. The magnitude of these actions, they are on different levels. So in terms of the obligatory actions, these are actions that you must perform. You cannot escape performing these actions. You are not allowed to perform the prayer without these particular actions. They're going to break into three categories. And remember, the categorization is important. From the obligatory, from the actions that are sought, they're obligatory and recommended. The obligatory break into three categories. The first category that we're going to take, it is a rukn. Its plural is the arkan, and we're going to refer to it as a pillar. We're going to refer to it as a pillar. What is this? How do we understand what a rukn, what a pillar of the salah is? Identify it for me, classify it for me. These are elements of the prayer within the prayer, but they are not done before the prayer. It's going to give you a general guideline, a general awareness. These are elements of the prayer. They take place within the prayer itself, but not before. And pay attention to this. Pay attention to this wording. That is within the prayer and that is not before the prayer, but it is an action of the prayer. This is very important. The second is a shart, or you may have heard it referred to as the shurut. We're referring to this as a condition. This is a condition. How are we going to classify it? How are we going to categorize it and define it? It's preconditional, and that it must remain in its entirety for the entire duration of the prayer. I wrote this wrong. But it's preconditional and it must remain the entire duration of the prayer. We're going to come back and we're going to start filling these categories in. The third category is that which is referred to as wajib. Very familiar term. That which is wajib, we refer to it as this is a must. This is a must at this particular time. It's a very soft definition, classification. This is a must of the salat. And it's performed upon its need. We're going to leave that vague as well. It's performed upon its need. So these classifications and this breakdown, for some individuals, this may be new. You may have never heard these terms. You may have never heard this classification before. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you a statement from Shaykh Uthaymeen, rahimahullah ta'ala, one of our well-known and respected scholars. May Allah have mercy on him. He has passed. In his explanation of Bulugh al-Maram, which is another work that details the salat. It is a work that is detailed by many and various scholars. In this particular work, there is a bab, there is a chapter, Bab Shurut al-Salat, the chapter of the conditions of the salat. And again, we're reading this point for the purpose of supporting. Where does this come from? A person may say, everything you've mentioned so far from this board is not from the detailed discussion of the salat. There's no Surah Al-Fatiha, there's no Qira'ah, there's no Takbir, there's no Sajda. So where does this take precedence over that? How does it correspond? How does it mend and mesh? And why this breakdown? So Shaykh Uthaymeen, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, فَإِنْ قَالَ قَائِلٌ. And this is a very familiar introductory statement that you hear from the people of knowledge, where they say, وَإِنْ قَالَ قَائِلٌ. And if someone was to say this, if someone was to say, Abu Layla, where is this from? هذه الشروط والواجبات والأركان التي ذكرها العلماء لا توجد في الكتاب أو السنة. It says here, these particular conditions, the wajibat, the arkan, التي ذكرها العلماء, that the scholars have spoken about and mentioned. لا توجد في الكتاب أو السنة. It's not in the Quran, nor is it in the Sunnah. You're not going to find these ta'birat. You're not going to find these classifications. You're not going to find these wordings inside of the Quran, nor are you going to find them in the Sunnah. So he says here, وَإِنْ قَالَ قَائِلٌ. What if hypothetically an individual says, where is this from? It's not in the Quran, it's not in the Sunnah. فَالْجَوَابِ. The Shaykh says, the answer. هي لا توجد في الكتاب أو السنة. It is not found in the Quran nor in the Sunnah. لكن العلماء, however the scholars, رحمهم الله, may Allah have mercy on them, تتبع النصوص. They have followed the narrations. As we mentioned with Sheikh Al-Albani, his care and his concern. I gathered all of the narrations. I weeded out what was unauthentic from what was authentic. I gathered the statements of the scholars supporting one particular position, and I weighed it with the position of other scholars on different positions. He says, تتبع النصوص. They follow these narrations. وأحصى ما يشترط للعبادة أو للمعاملات. And they have collected and gathered what is put forth for the aspect of worship, or whether it be for general actions and transactions amongst the people. ثم جمعوها ورتبوها حسب ما تقتضيه النصوص. Then they gathered these narrations and they arranged them according to what the text called for. The scholars, they saw the narrations, they gathered them, they arranged them according to what the text presented to them. وجعلوها وسيلة لتقريب العلم وتسهيلا لطالب العلم. And this is a very lofty position and effort of the scholars of what they have done for us. وجعلوها وسيلة لتقريب العلم لتقريب العلوم وتسهيلا لطالب العلم. They have made it an avenue so that the knowledge could be brought forth and presented for the people and be made easy for the students of knowledge. This is part of the purpose and the effort behind the scholars gathering the narrations. They made it easy for you and I to get the knowledge into our hands, and they made it easy for the students of knowledge. As well, the Shaykh rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, ثم إن الوسائل لها أحكام المقاصد. And this is a very lofty principle. That إن الوسائل لها أحكام المقاصد. That this path that they have taken, the effort that they have taken to gather these narrations and draw from them the benefits for us, to categorize the prayer so that it would be made easy for us to acquire the knowledge and to seek the knowledge. إن الوسائل لها أحكام المقاصد. This particular approach that they took is going to be giving the purpose of its outcome. This path and this direction that they took is going to be given and associated with what was the final goal and outcome of what it was intended for. فهم لا يتعبدون لله تعالى بهذه الأوصاف. That these particular scholars, they did not try to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with these particular terms. This was not the goal of the scholars, to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by breaking down the salat and saying, this, we want you to absorb it as a shart. We want you to absorb this aspect of your salat as a rukn, as a pillar. وليست هي المقصودة بذاتها حتى يكونوا قد أحدثوا في دين الله ما ليس منه. This was not the intent of the desire of the scholars itself for that, so that we might say now that they have invented and introduced something into the religion of al-Islam, that which is not from it. وحينئذ لا يجوز الاعتراض على ما مشى عليه العلماء. And from this point we will see that there is no opposition to what the scholars have put forward for us in this particular breakdown. So in summary, you're not going to find these terms, you're not going to find this classification inside of the Quran, you're not going to find it inside the hadith of the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. Where does it come from? It comes from the scholars following the narrations of the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam. Likewise, if you study Arabic, you're not going to find inside of the Quran or inside of the Sunnah, Nahu or Sarf. You're not going to find inside of the Quran or the Sunnah, Ismun, Fi'lun, wa Harfun, Ja'a li Ma'na. A noun, a verb, or a particle of the Arabic language that has some type of meaning associated with it. Where does this particular breakdown come from? It comes from the scholars following the narrations, seeking a manner to present the knowledge easily, handedly for the people, so that the students of knowledge could acquire this knowledge easily. So We're going to go back now. We're going to discuss a little bit more on the rukn, the shart, and the wajib of the salat. This work, this is the explanation of Bulugh al-Maram by Sheikh Fawzan. This is also upon the chapter of the shurut of the salat. Concerning the shart, the condition, the Shaykh, he says, هو ما يلزم من عدمه العدم ولا يلزم من وجوده وجود ولا عدم لذاته. And this is very important. As we mentioned, the shart, it is conditional, meaning that it is preconditional, and it must remain the entire duration of your prayer. هو ما يلزم من عدمه العدم. So this necessitates that when this condition is absent, what it was conditional for is also absent. We understand from the absence of this condition, if it's not there, what it is a condition of is not there. Okay. From the conditions of the salat, as we see here, is preconditional. It must remain the entire duration of the prayer. These are conditions that precede the salat itself. An-niyya, at-tuhur, purification. The intent of the person, the purification of the person. It necessitates from the absence of the niyyah, there is no prayer, even if you went through the actions. It necessitates from the absence of the purification, the salat is not there, even if you went through the actions of the salat. But a very crucial point, the Shaykh, he mentions here, وَلَا يَلْزَمُ مِنْ وُجُودِهِ وُجُودُ. I'm sorry, we'll go back. وَلَا يَلْزَمُ مِنْ وُجُودِهِ وُجُودٌ وَلَا عَدَمٌ لِذَاتِهِ. It isn't necessitated from the absence of it, is absence. And at the same time, it does not necessitate from its presence that that thing itself is present. Like the opposite for the opposite. The niyyah is there. The person prayed. It doesn't mean that that prayer is wholesome. When they say, well, I performed purification, my niyyah was there, I made the takbir, faced the qibla, so forth, different actions of the salat. Just by the mere presence of the niyyah doesn't mean that the salat is sound. But by its absence, it necessitates there is no salat. So the absence necessitates absence. But the presence does not necessitate presence. It is possible that an individual has the purification. He has the niyyah. He has other aspects, other actions of the prayer. And there is no salat whatsoever. Because there may be other aspects that are void. The presence of a condition itself does not necessitate that there is the presence of what it is conditioned for. It is a condition of. So this is very important. This shart, it is a condition. It is preconditional, and it must remain the entire duration of the prayer. The Shaykh, he goes on and he says, concerning the shurut of the salah, هي الأشياء التي لا تصح إلا بها. These are things that the salah, it is not sound, it is not correct, except with those conditions. وهي قبلها, and they take place before you enter into the salah. فالشروط يجب أن تكون متوافرة قبل الصلاة. the conditions of the prayer, they must be fulfilled before you enter into the salat. So whatever we start to categorize under this condition, these are aspects and actions of the prayer. You have to have this before you enter the salat. And as we mentioned, because you have it doesn't mean that you have the salat, but with the absence of it, we know you have no salat. وَتَسْتَمِرُّ إِلَى فَرَاغِ مِنْهَا. Concluding upon its description, it must remain for the entirety of the salat. You have to have it with you prior to entering into the salat, and it must remain with you for the entire duration of the salat. I'll give you an example. And we'll use the niyyah, because it's going to be the first aspect of the book that we actually start to expound upon, even though it's not the first aspect of the book of the Shaykh, because the niyyah itself has a lofty characteristic of it concerning the sincerity for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As you'll see, the niyyah is of two categorizations. What the niyyah is for in terms of action, is it for an obligatory prayer, an optional prayer? And the other categorization of it, who is the deed for? Is it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or other than Allah? So the niyyah itself, its loftiness, its importance, is going to be the first of the topics of the book of the Shaykh that we're actually going to expound upon. But I'll give you an example concerning the niyyah, because it is from amongst these aspects. It's preconditional. You don't start the prayer and then say, okay, within yourself, I'm going to pray. That intent, that desire precedes entrance into the prayer. So now we know what? We have to have a door into the prayer, which is another sidebar. So that's a critical point. We want to know, when do we get to the point when we actually enter into the salat? That these conditions have to be present prior to entering into it. The niyyah is one of these conditions. It must be present before entering into the salat. And I'll give you an example of how understanding the importance of this categorization, this classification, the definition, is very important, and how it can remove you from situations that may overtake you at times. An individual goes to make the salat, he goes to pray. He enters into the salat and he says, Allahu Akbar. Doesn't raise his hands. Is he in the salat? There's a question. There's a question. He said, Allahu Akbar. He's intending the prayer. The niyyah is there. He's facing the Qibla. He says, Allahu Akbar, but he doesn't raise the hands. Is he in the salat? Has his salat began? Let me just see from a show of hands, those that would say his prayer has not begun. So I would take and assume the rest say he has. The raising of the hands are from the sunan. It's recommended. You would not blame the individual that left it off, but you would praise his performance of the action, because it's not obligatory. You wouldn't put blame where blame is not due. So if you go to this categorization where the raising of the hand with whatever description, to the ears, to the shoulders, fingers spread, fingers closed, with the takbir, after the takbir, before the takbir, nothing to do with the validity of entering into the salat. Miftahu salat at-takbir, Allahu Akbar. And then there's even difference of the scholars. Does it have to be this particular wording? Is Allahu Akbar the only key, or Allahu A'zam, Allahu Akram, Allahu Arham? Can I use a different wording? There are some scholars that would say yes, you could enter into the salat like that. Majority of them would tell you no. You must enter with this particular wording, Allahu Akbar. So we know by the time you got to this point, going back to the crux of the story, that the niyyah is there. Now the individual, he has some type of confusion within himself. He came to pray Asr. He said, I didn't pray Dhuhr. The tartib, the sequence of the salat, is out of order. So he says to himself, I'm just going to make this Dhuhr and keep it moving. He's going to keep going. Remember, the surah, the situation, the picture of this example, he came to the salat, Allahu Akbar. I didn't pray Dhuhr. I'm praying Asr. I'm going to make this salat Dhuhr. Within himself, he makes this mental transition inside of the salat. This is the niyyah. It's preconditional. Where is he making the transition? In the salat. He's at the wrong position for this particular action of the salat. So now I'm going to give you more of this story. This is the detailed explanation of the scholars concerning this issue, the severity of it, to show you what can happen, how severe this can go terribly south like this. So the individual says to himself, I started Asr, I didn't pray Dhuhr, I know I didn't pray Dhuhr, I gotta pray Dhuhr, I'm already in the salat, how easy is it, how simplistic is it, and convenient, I will just change my niyyah, because I have purification, I'm facing the Qibla, I would just change my niyyah from Asr to Dhuhr. But as we already see, this has become troublesome because you've introduced a condition for that salat. Because as we mentioned, the niyyah starts to decipher which action from the other action now. We're not talking about who is for. The niyyah starts to decipher which action from which obligatory action from another obligatory action, which obligatory action from a non-obligatory action. The niyyah does all of these fluctuations, and it's an action of the heart. So the individual has changed his niyyah from Asr to Dhuhr. Based off of what we presented so far, we already see that this is troublesome. How troublesome? Where would you expect this individual is when he concludes his prayer and he says, as he's leaving the masjid, man, I was running in here so fast to make Asr, I forgot I made Dhuhr, but I just changed my niyyah inside my prayer and I continue to make Dhuhr. And I'm going to run, I'm going to come back, I'm going to pray Asr in a few minutes. What would you say to him? What would you say to him? Why? He's going to say, Aki, I just prayed. Why are you telling me to seek Allah's forgiveness? He says, I did that. So he's going to say, where's the correlation between what you're saying and what I did? He should have made Asr also? He should have salammed out? We're going to come back to what you said. Somebody hold what he said. I need somebody to do me a favor. Hold his position of what he said, so I don't forget it, that he should have salammed out. Right? This is very important. You're going to see how all of this is going to tie in at the end. Sister, you wanted to say? From the definition of the condition, stay where you're at. Stay strong in your position. From the definition of the shart, it's preconditional. It must remain the entire duration of the prayer. And from its explanation that we brought, with its absence, it necessitates absence. There is no salat. So you say he should have salammed out. Actually, you know what happened? He lost Asr and he lost Dhuhr. We're talking about at that particular time. He was in prayer. He nullified his prayer by switching his niyyah. He nullified the niyyah of the salah he entered in with, which was sound. He just was unaware that he did not perform dhuhr. So his salah would have been sound. He could have afterwards, I didn't pray dhuhr. Right? But when you say he should have salamed out, once he changed his niyyah, he lost it. You see what we're saying? When you change the niyyah, which is preconditional, everything that was resting on it, it's gone. What we would necessitate from the absence of the niyyah of that particular salat, that salat is gone. There's nothing to taslim from. And this is something that a person may not be aware of and think, I only have to go back to pray one prayer, and actually you lost a prayer. Now, if what? But what was the whole purpose of why he lost the prayer? He switched his intention. So he nullified his original intention, which was a precondition for the salah itself. So everything that was resting on that got lost. Okay, now we're going to go a little bit further into what you're saying. He's in the salah, intended asr, switches for dhuhr. The prayer, he lost the original prayer because of his niyyah. He eradicated it. He deleted it from himself. The next prayer that he's intending to go into, that niyyah has to be there before that prayer started, but you don't enter into that salat until you do what? Miftahu salat at-tuhur. The key to the prayer is purifications. With tahrimuha, what shuts down everything for the salat? This is how we know we enter into the salat. With tahrimuha, what nullifies everything of undesirable actions inside of the salat? At takbir. He's still in the salat. There's no performance of the takbir. There's no new salat starting. So he lost from one side because he nullified his niyyah. He's under the awareness and understanding he's still in the prayer, and he thinks that the only thing that needs to be done is to change the niyyah. But you can't enter into the prayer, as you will see, the takbir. That enters you into the prayer. The niyyah must be there before. The two of them are separated. So he has not performed the takbir to initiate any new salat. And again, this is just a breakdown of showing you how something so simple can go sour so fast. And this is something that is going to be the first thing you're questioned about on Yom Qiyamah. No, I'm sure.
And she told him what had happened. And finally, the Prophet went on the minbar and he asked the question that shows the importance here. He said, what is the matter with you? That they make conditions that are not in the book of Allah, nor in the Sunnah of the Prophet. No. And I can see here how relevant that particular narration is in talking about the conditions of things.
No. No. Well, he entered into the prayer of Asr, understanding that it was the time of Asr. Then he came to the awareness, as many of us, Bani Adam, we forget, that he did not pray. He did not pray Dhuhr. So now, for sake of convenience, he says, I'm just going to change my niyyah. I don't have to make any adjustments. I don't have to make any type of changes. I'm doing something which is an action of the heart. So as soon as he thinks it, he can do it. I'll just change the niyyah from Asr to Dhuhr. Now, okay, Khan. If I understand your question correctly, it seems as if there are components to it. One of them, which is known, the prayer is accepted within its time frame. It must be performed within its time frame to be accepted. This is what is commanded of us. It also seems as if inside of your question there is the understanding that if you have not prayed a particular prayer, that you do not have the allowance to go back to pray that prayer. Am I understanding you correct? طيب. طيب. Inside of the mithal, the scenario that I gave you, the individual was praying Asr in time of Asr itself, which is commanded of him, but he remembers that he didn't pray. We're not saying he intentionally did not pray, because even with this situation, you have the narration of the Prophet ﷺ that the qalam is raised from three individuals. عن النائم حتى يستيقظ, the individual that is sleeping until he awakens. And the individual at the same time, different narration, an individual, that remembers that he has forgotten to pray. It's commanded to pray at that particular time. The individual that is unaware that he has prayed a particular prayer, at the time it comes to his awareness, that is the moment of his accountability for that particular prayer. So that's the scenario that we're bringing. It's highly unlikely that an individual that intentionally left off praying Salatul Dhuhr will have such concern while he's in another prayer to want to pray that prayer. So we're bringing the scenario under the guise that this is the person that is upon their prayer, a person that has concern and care for their prayer, but like Bani Adam, he has forgotten. He has forgotten that he has to pray Dhuhr, for whatever reason it may be. But we're raising the aspect of blame off of the individual with a noteworthy allowance for him. Situation of an individual that may have been sleeping, situation of an individual that has just forgotten, become overwhelmed with his daily activities and businesses and so forth. Further.
I think it's really asking if you, say for instance, you in the hospital, you forgot to do it. Okay. Is the do a salat when you remember? Is it acceptable as a do a salat, as a Florida salat later on?
Why has the individual not prayed dhuhr? إنما الأعمال بالنية. Actions are only but by intentions.
And because a lot of times I'm at work, and I might blow through it. So now with the demand,
عمدا أو غير متعمد. Intentionally or unintentionally. Oh, say هذا خير. This is Bani Adam. This is Bani Adam. This is the characteristics and traits of Bani Adam. He's forgetful.
okay, but this question. When you miss it. Now you're an us with the demand. Is it important that you pray with the demand? But now you remember, okay, do it. Now I want to establish the door, but what is the is it what now or is it sunnah or what is it?
The Sunnah.
I'm saying, is it? I mean,
He's in an obligatory prayer.
it would never be obligatory prayer.
An obligatory prayer will never equal a sunan or a complementary prayer. Okay, in this situation, the individual, he goes in to pray, he's with the Jama'ah, or maybe he's by himself, he's praying Asr, and then he realizes that he has not prayed Dhuhr. In this situation, continue with the Asr. Continue with the Asr. This is the prayer at hand. This is the prayer that you have entered into. Under the guise of what is commanded of you, you have done everything up to the letter of what is recommended and desired and obligated for you to do. After the completion of your Asr, now you can go and you can pray your Dhuhr. Naam, ya akhi.
There's two different issues. Can I ask you a question? There's two different issues being mentioned here.
That's why I was trying to get his surah correct.
One issue is
Let's see if the brother can clarify for us, inshallah.
One issue is, can you pray the prayer when it's out? If you do it and if you miss the prayer, it's mentioning three issues. If you miss the prayer intentionally, it takes another verdict.
Right, that's what we're saying.
And that's what the scholars of Islam differ about. If you intentionally miss your prayer.
Right.
Is it accepted if he prays it over or not?
Right.
That's what they differ in. But they do not differ is he has to still pray it over. Second issue is if I come into the masjid and the comments call for the Salatul Asr, for example, and I didn't pray Dhuhr, the ulama, like Sheikh Ibn Baz and Uthaymeen, has clarified it's not permissible to put a prayer before another prayer, except in the case if the prayer is about to go out. Like say Asr is about to go out, and you didn't pray Dhuhr or Asr. This instance, you pray Asr first.
Keep it in its tartib.
Because keep it, then you go back and pray Dhuhr.
No.
Because if you pray Dhuhr, you're going to miss Asr in its proper time. So you pray the prayer in its proper time. That's another thing. Now, if I come into the masjid and the imam is leading the comments call, and I didn't pray Dhuhr, what's supposed to happen is that I enter the prayer behind the imam with the intentions of praying Dhuhr.
Right.
With the intentions of praying Dhuhr. And I pray that with the Jama'ah. And I get back up and pray Asr.
No.
Like this. No. Now, in the case, these have hukum all by itself, interconnected. Now, this has a verdict in and of itself in Islam. Secondly, that if the person is performing the salah and he comes into the prayer and he joins the salah, that if he forgot to pray that prayer and he remembers before he performs the prayer, like you're just saying, I didn't pray Dhuhr and I remember, and we're not in front of a jama'ah. The Prophet gave the time of that person. He said, waqtu salatu, the time of prayer, man na'an, for the one sleeping, idha stayqadha, it's when he wake up. And the prayer time for the one who forgot is when he remembers. So their prayer time completely changed. So these are different. They're mixing several issues together. You have to separate them and give them their proper place.
No, when we get to the sister. Sister, is it still obscure or is it clarified? Okay, so now, right. Okay, so the prayer that the individual missed, was it an obligatory prayer? Okay, so now when the individual if we're saying that it's sanctioned, that that door is still open for you to pray it. Like you haven't missed it intentionally and say, I'm not going to pray and so forth, as the brothers mentioned it, scholars mentioned with that and with fasting. You miss a day, you're not making it up with the salat. They say you intentionally missed it, you're not making it up. But we're going to go with the guise and the understanding that the person just forgot. They got behind on the awareness of the prayer. This is natural with the son of Adam. There's no blame in this situation. The accountability is upon you when you remember. So the individual is going to pray what he missed. In this situation, you're mentioning it is an obligatory prayer. They're going to intend to make up that prayer as an obligatory prayer because that's what it is. Other than that, you would not be making it if they missed it unintentionally. If you missed it intentionally, as what I have come across from the statements of the people of knowledge, it is just like an individual that has intentionally chosen not to fast a day from the month of Ramadan. Cannot make it up whatsoever. It's lost. It can be supported by optional recommended fasting, as the salat will be looked at on that day. Whatever is missing, and we say, look to if there are from his other prayers, that which would support it and help to buttress and complete it. The same thing with the fasting. If the individual has missed a day of fasting on their own accord, out of their own will, and chose not to fast, that day cannot be made up whatsoever. The fasting that they may do on Mondays and Tuesdays, the white nights, Arafat, and so forth, these are affairs that will be looked at to help complete what could be lost from an individual's fast. But that day of fasting can't be made up. There's no way to replace that particular day. Well, a person may be under the understanding and the awareness that they may be allowed to make that prayer up. They may be under that position and awareness that I didn't pray, I'm going to pray. Not the sunnah. We're not talking about the sunnah. If it's a sunnah, we want to look at the situation. If it's associated with a time frame, when that time frame is lost, that sunnah of that particular prayer is lost. The description of it is associated with a time frame. So it can't, because they lost the reason for the sanctioning of that particular salat. It's associated with the time frame. No, 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 no. Say it again. Oh, I mean, this is without a doubt. I don't think anyone questions that. The five obligatory prayers, they have to be performed, they have to be prayed. But let's say the individual, he hasn't prayed two sunan after Salatul Maghrib. He's running, just general schedule busies him. He forgets. Salatul Isha comes upon him. We're not dealing with the obligatory aspect of Salatul Isha. We're just dealing with the fact that he's lost the time frame of whatever is associated with Maghrib, whether it's the aspect of the dhikr or the salat. He's lost that particular, because there are aspects of dhikr that are associated with certain times of the day. And you wouldn't say, oh, I forgot to perform it, I'm going to perform it now. You've lost it. You've lost it. There are other aspects of virtue that can be performed at that particular time. But to take it out of its time frame and to perform it in another time frame when it's not sanctioned in that time frame, it's not legislated. So if an individual has lost, if we say, a optional salat from a particular time frame and remembers later on, they've lost that. If it's an obligatory prayer, that is incumbent upon that individual to replace that prayer, to make up that prayer when they remember.
Also, in certain jobs, like you might be nejis and like working on the back of the sanitation truck, you might be nejis because you may not have stingia or
Okay.
something got on you, or
Okay.
you have to wait till you get purity time between, say, like Thor and Asa or Asa and Margaret, depends on the time.
I mean,
Fajr even, and sometimes the Salat come in, like we was working at night at one time. Fajr would come and we would, know where to make wudu or when water wasn't available.
Toyib, these situations, they're common. And I'm going to say that in the sense that we're going to go different directions with it. I've been in them situations myself, whether I'm here in Jersey, whether I'm in New York. We'll take, for an example, an individual dealing with filthy and impure surroundings. I work in the transit system. Train stations are full of urine, defecation, whether it's human or animal, right? You are only obligated to pray purified in a purified area, not in a purified world. So your place of prostration and your area that you pray on within must be pure. Its surroundings do not have to be pure. Whether we're talking about is it desirable, is it something that an individual would entertain, that's another conversation. The conversation at hand is, will it affect the soundness of your salat? If you are in wudu, your prayer rug is pure, but around you there's najasa. Will it affect the soundness of your prayer? No, it won't. There's no reason not to pray. Let's say the individual will take another scenario. Doesn't have water. There are alternatives for purification other than water. Even when it comes to purifying from impurities, there are alternatives other than water. The religion is easy. So in this situation, given the magnitude and the severity of what we're dealing with, the individual has to take these things hand in hand. If there's no water, perform tayammum. Perform tayammum. Even in a situation, the individual, I'm gonna give you another example. Going off with the brothers, merging what he's saying as well, the time frame. An individual realizes that he's junub, meaning he's in a state where he has to perform a ghusl for whatever reason. For whatever reason, that's not the concern. The concern is you are junub, meaning you must perform a ghusl, right? So we already know at this stage, you're at the point where you have to perform a ghusl. The time for your salat only allows you now at this time, once you realize, because before you didn't realize, you're at work, and you say, last night, let's say hypothetically, I was with my family, I ran out, it's time for me to perform fajr, or whatever the situation is. You got off the truck, you were trying to perform your duties, now you realize you got to pray. So I'm getting ready to pray fajr, going to make wudu, you need to perform a ghusl. In this situation, tayammum would suffice you in this situation for your janaba, because there's absence of water and there's not enough time for you to perform a ghusl. We're just saying that there are avenues where the situation is complex and it's very difficult for an individual to perform certain actions with ease, with conveniency. But what we should not confuse is convenience for performance of an obligation. That when the convenience isn't there, the obligation is abandoned and it's not performed. There are so many avenues where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us allowances to perform the deeds and activities that need to be performed for the individual that's praying. Pray standing, qa'iman. فَإِن لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ فَجَالِسًا. Then pray sitting. فَإِن لَمْ تَسْتَطِعْ فَعَلَى الْجَنْبِ. Then pray on your side. Even for individuals that the scholars, they say, you don't have enough clothes to cover your entire body. As a man, we're not dealing with the women, as a man. Now this goes back to what really has to be covered. This is the crucial part of this conversation. At bare minimum, what has to be covered? private parts. You don't have nothing. You don't have nothing. You can be in prison, you can be stripped, naked, and in prison. You have to pray. Prayer is not removed. You have to pray. Prayer is not removed from you. Fattaqullaha mastata'tum, to the most best level of your capability. Not mine, not his, not what you had, not what you are thinking you're going to get in your present situation. You're stripped bone naked, you're thrown into a prison, and they're telling you to pray, and all you're given is a napkin about the size, a napkin, the size of this book. You got to pray. You got to cover your private parts. In this situation, it's only going to cover one side, front or back. Huh? From the detailed discussion, what I've seen from the scholars, they say you're going to pray and you're going to cover your rear side, because when you bend over, it's going to expose yourself. And when you stand and when you bend over as a male, you will be more concealed from the front than you would from the rear. The priority now is to concern yourself with covering your rear.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. يصل المحدث الإمام النبوي.
Okay, جزاك الله خيرا. ما شاء الله، بارك الله فيك.